Good day, everybody. Today, let's talk about hard situations. Story time. I remember my first attempt in a relationship with a woman was quite disastrous. All I was doing is cajoling her attention. I was crying, I was losing my appetite. I could not eat properly, believe it or not. I could not focus on my job, and I remember once I was getting down the escalator in the Moscow metro and the tears were rolling down my cheeks. So that was quite atrocious. I was behaving like a little boy who was trying to cajole some sort of airplane toy from his parents in a supermarket when his parents could not afford it. I was too dramatic. I was even biting myself in the hand to kind of like earn the attention of the woman, but that was not the way to go, I felt like. So I decided to improve the situation. The relationship kind of was attempted, but ultimately the rejection took place. So I suffered a rejection. If you think about it, rejections not only happen, they are quite painful in relationships, I would say, but they could also be happening in actually an equally painful fashion in other facets of life. Such as I remember when we were trying to submit our first publication to the American Chemical Society journal, I think it was, JAX. We also received a rejection notice from the editor. But it's okay. Then I was trying to get a job and then I got rejected multiple times, maybe like about 100 times. Rejections, if you think, are pretty ubiquitous, but they bring about some difficult situations into our lives, such as the realization that we are not competent enough to get into a particular relationship, get our manuscript accepted, or get a job. Of course, it could be a little bit different. Maybe we are quite good the way we are, maybe we wrote quite nice manuscripts, and maybe we possess nice skills for a job, but we just cannot quite make it. Outcome number one was to become deeply depressed because of various rejections on multiple fronts of my life. I can become depressed, I can become perpetually sad, upset, I can become perpetually crying as a man. As ridiculous as it sounds, it can quite happen. But I thought to myself, okay, well, that seems to be like a naturally easy thing to embark on, be basically depressed. But then I asked myself, is it really a good way? And I said to myself, it is not appropriate. I need to change. I cannot step on the same rake and hit myself in the head with the rake handle and be happy about that. That was not the way to go. So I decided to improve. How did I solve it for myself? Or at least, how am I trying to solve it for myself? I realized actually after some ruminations that it is a kind of education, let's say being rejected by an employer or the potential employer, being rejected by an editor, being rejected by a woman. It is a huge educational experience which you cannot get from a university unless there is a course that subjects you to rejections of all kinds and teaches you how to deal with those rejections. I'm not sure if such courses exist at all. At least it wasn't available for me to enroll into. So I enrolled into the real life situation course. For example, when I was rejected by a woman, or any time I'm rejected by a woman, I draw conclusions. And basically this is something about either this person, okay, well, we are not compatible, or maybe it is about me. Maybe I am not possessing good enough character traits. Maybe I was not good enough at communication. Maybe my grooming was not on point. And then all those factors could have led to rejections. Of course, every rejection case is unique. And you need to consider this individually on a case-by-case basis. But if you look at those unique cases, it's easier to dissect them and see what went wrong and then improve. That's what I do to myself, and I notice that I'm gradually improving along various fronts of my romantic life. When I was improving in terms of job applications, I realized, okay, well, maybe my presentation skills were not on point. And I was working on improving my presentation skills. Eventually they improved and my presentations became better. They didn't become exceptional, but they did become better. And then it led to less rejections and ultimately getting a job I wanted and even dreamed of, I might say. Great success. You can also be rejected in a kickboxing sparring, for example. Maybe all your strikes and all your punches and all your kicks were denied and defended. So this is a kind of rejection. So what do we do about that? I would talk to the coach, I would talk to some learning materials, some educational materials about kickboxing, Muay Thai, striking broadly, and I would improve by the next training session. So this is pretty great. So it kind of like ties to the idea that rejections and hard situations as a whole are great learning experience to be grateful for. Mumtaz. I decided to subject myself to those potentially rejection-filled situations more often. And guess what? I became gradually desensitized to rejections. Of course, sometimes I can feel sad, that's pretty natural to me, but I shut down much less frequently. And eventually it became much better. So I cannot say that at this point I'm completely desensitized to rejections, but I could say that I handle them much better compared to how I was handling the rejection back in the day. I feel like I became a stronger man. Not quite strong, but better. If you think about being rejected, what can it lead us to? Guess what? It is self-improvement on a broad scale. Maybe, yeah, you were rejected because of your presentation skills, but ultimately it could be the case with your communication skills, which was mine. At this point, as you are watching this video and you are probably cringing a little bit, which is okay, it will improve, pun intended. My communication skills were not quite good, and then my presentation skills were also not good as a consequence. So I decided to work on that. I decided to improve this particular area of my life. So then I was looking at other cases of rejection, maybe at sports, for instance. Let's just switch off from dating a little bit. And then I realized, okay, well, I need to improve some skills in the sports area, and so on. So self-improvement was a big push towards, which happened after I suffered multiple rejections. Let's say in the US, can I be a whiny boy? Can I use this character model, let's say, to achieve my goals in the US? It's not a good idea. So I decided to self-improve. Self-improvement is by no means an easy pathway. It requires discipline and all those good old skills, which are actually free. Rejections and the subsequent hard situations, hard feelings that you can get into are learning experience. Of course, some rejections are quite drastic, some of them are not quite drastic, but let's think about them on a broad scale and not some kind of extreme cases. Let's consider rejections and the subsequent hard situations to deal with as free education. And free education is pretty nice because you don't end up having a loan that you need to pay off. Let's appreciate the challenges and rejections in particular, learn from them, and actually become better versions of ourselves. Jayed. Keep hacking the life.